Under the hood, everyone always wants to see this. Didn't hear it prime. It's not good. Hey everybody, it's Adam again. I want to talk about my 1999 GMC Sonoma today. This isn't just a regular Sonoma. It's got an LS6 under the hood from a 2003 Z06 Corvette and a bunch of other stuff done to it. But in particular, we had an issue at the end of last year before we put it away for storage. The fuel pump connector went bad on it, so it wouldn't start. And we've also had a lingering fuel leak at the top of the fuel tank we're going to fix today. A little bit of history about this truck. My family bought it brand new off the lot back in 1999, and it's basically passed down through my sister to me. I took my driver's test in this truck when I was 15 years old. It started out with an original 2.2 liter four-cylinder, which is over there in the corner of the garage still. But basically, I've had it ever since I was 16 years old, and that's a long time now. So I'm going to hang on to this truck for a long time, but there's a lot of history in this truck. We'll do a walk around outside. I'll talk a little bit more about the other history that this truck has been through. And it hasn't always looked like this. It's always been black, but it had daily driver duty for about 10, 15 years there. Really suffered the rust from that, but we put a lot of time into it about 10 years ago after the motor swap. And it's what it looks like today. So we'll do a walk around once we get outside. We're going to have to remove the bed. We're going to have to fix the fuel pump leak as well as the connector. And she'll be back on the road today. All right, let's talk a little bit about the modifications we've got in this truck. So, of course, under the hood, everyone always wants to see this. I've got a LS6 motor, as I mentioned before, basically dropped right in there. Don't have the AC quite figured out yet. I do need to weld up a new manifold coming off of the AC compressor. But really, this motor fits right down in there pretty good. The only thing I had to do to modify two different things to get the motor to fit down in there mechanically. I did have to cut a little bit of a relief back into the AC box here to allow that coil pack to fit back in there. And then I also had to notch the frame down where the AC compressor is on the original Corvette motor. I left that AC compressor there and had to notch the frame, and hey, it's been sitting in there pretty good. But there'll be more to come on the LS6 and how we made that work in there, and we'll talk a little bit more about the rest of the truck here. So one of the last things I did last year before we had the fuel pump issue, I put in Hydro Boost. And another issue that we had when we put the V8 in here, we had this coil pack back here that was basically touching on the original vacuum booster. So eventually that vacuum booster went bad, and by the time that happened, I decided I would put Hydro Boost in there. Got that off of 2500 HD from 2010, ordered it online, ran the new plumbing in there, also put in a bias valve and got rid of the ABS on this as well. And now we've got functioning brakes that really stop great. And I'll talk a little bit more about the brakes in a second. But as far as under the hood goes, basically we got a almost an OEM looking setup here. Really wanted to go for that when we put in the LS6 motor. And the nice thing about this package over here with the ECU sitting there is it fits in the same spot, the stock location of the 2.2 liter ECU, and the fuse box, everything else with the wiring harness. My brother and I did that back in 2013, and we're able to get everything to package up here real nicely. There we go, that's it. All right. All right, let's talk about the brakes on this truck. So back when I did the swap, we put Corvette C5 brakes on there up front. Bought the Z06 wheels off of the wrecked Z06 that the motor came from. And I also put a 2000 Blazer rear end in it to get the discs on there. We've got a 342 gear ratio in the back. and it was off a four-wheel drive Blazer, so the rear end is about 2 inches wider than what you get with the standard two-wheel drive. So the nice thing is it widened the track out just a little bit. So let's talk about the rear end here for a little bit. So late last year, I put in a Detroit Truetrac. That's basically a limited slip differential. It's very similar to a Quaife differential that you see in the European cars. It's got helical gears in there that really operate as a limited slip. Also put on a TA Performance cover, and that helps strengthen up with the end caps on the bearings. You can see both on the left and the right hand side of it, we've got 2 studs that go in there that support those bearings. Also, as far as suspension goes in the back, we've got some helper springs there with the Monroe helper spring shock system. Put those on back when I was towing the camper with it. And we've also put in some of these traction bars here, basically just bolt-on traction bars. We'll go with something a little bit better here later on, but those ultimately do the job for now. No ground clearance issues, and everything has done pretty well so far with this truck. Back in 2013, January 2013, I managed to lose control in the winter, and a guardrail met me right here in the, right basically where you fill up the gas tank at. Broke the rear axle, destroyed the bed on the truck, and that was about the time where I decided, well, you know, let's do an LS6 swap. Let's get the truck looking nice again. And basically from there, it's just been adding piece by piece. One thing in particular, if you haven't noticed already, you've got a little bit of a bubble flare on the side of the bed of the truck here. And back in the late 90s, early 2000s, GM built an Isuzu Ombre, which had these bubbled flares on here. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, but basically it pops out here. They also had a thinner body line, but what I did is I took fender flare from the crew cab S10s, the four full-size door crew cab S10, and I modified it so I could get that body line of the S10 and put it on this bed of the truck. If you look real closely at those crew cab S10s, they've got that Isuzu Ombre bed on there, and they also put these fender flares on here. One of the difficult things about getting this to work was on that four-door S10, they've got another little piece that kind of comes off here. It squares off to meet up with the door trim. I had to cut that off on these. I filled it in with Bondo, sanded it down real nice, and when I went to have the truck go painted, we had the fender flares painted separately, and it really ended up nice. So with that wider rear end on there from the Blazer rear end, we've actually got a little wider track in the rear end than we do in the front. It gives it kind of a nice sports car stance with the wider rear end on it. Also helps out with handling quite a bit too. All right, guys, let's go inside the interior here. So really nothing special, pretty much a stock Sonoma interior. I do want to talk about the transmission a little bit. This is a transmission out of a 4.3 liter S10. Again, this truck was a 2.2 liter 4-cylinder as it started out, but the NV3500 transmission bolts up to the back of the LS motors. And in fact, GM sent that off the factory floor with the 4.8 liter smaller LS motor. So since the bolt patterns are the same, I figured rather than putting $1,500 into a T56 Tremec transmission, we'd try out the NV3500 and see how that went. So far, it's been great. I mean, I've put probably 25,000 miles on it since I did the engine swap. Also towed a trailer with this. Had to put a high output clutch on there. It's a center force clutch, and basically put the 4.8 liter flywheel on there as well, and everything is held up really nicely. The only downfall is you don't have a 6th gear, so when we're cruising down the highway at 70-75 miles an hour, we're about 3,000 RPM. So it'll run down the highway 22 miles per gallon, but you don't get the 26, 27 that you see on the Corvettes. Another thing, I got this nice wrapped steering wheel here. It was a modification I put on back in college. It really adds a little more diameter to the steering wheel. Is great, but yeah, man, one of the best mods on this truck has been putting this nice padded steering wheel cover on there. All right, let's go to work on that fuel pump leak in the connector. I want to show you where the fuel pump connector burned up on us underneath here. So this comes from the sensor unit underneath there. It's for the fuel gauge, and there's our burned up terminal. So Didn't blow a fuse or anything. I guess I'm just chalking it up to there being old connections on this and that connection being pulled a couple times. But in order to get at this thing, you either got to drop the tank or pull the bed off. So what we're going to do is pull the bed off, and I'm going to replace the O-ring and replace the connector on there as well. There's a fuel pump and the sending unit up on top. We got a lot of Midwestern rust around there, but before we did the fuel pump last year, it didn't leak. So my guess is that O-ring just needs to be seated in there differently. Then of course, we're gonna fix the connector on there. All right.
So you're gonna have Abraham go in after all this and he'll splice everything together.
That's right. Abe makes his own videos inside for playing video games.
No, not video games.
Oh,
games. Yeah.
oh, regular games. Yeah, you're right, buddy. Sorry. Watch out there, David.
But I did.
That O-ring, I think, was just pinched inside there.
No, you can't.
Nope. Watch out there, buddy.
Get
Come
like
here, buddy. Come here, Abe. So I think what I'm going to do is just grease that O-ring up on there. Clean that up in there. That's
So
it.
that's where it was leaking, you said, right?
Yes. I can see, actually I can see where the O-ring was peeled up underneath there.
Oop. Oh boy, she's pouring on
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, what the heck? Wow. I mean, that's, you know, that's what we're trying to avoid. Wow. So when we pulled the pump back out, it still looked like the O-ring wasn't sitting right in there. And also noticed that the tabs, the metal tabs that go underneath the snap ring on the top of the tank, were sort of deflected up. So we went ahead and bent those down a little bit and used a little more elbow grease and some strength to push that O-ring and sending unit back down in there. Also needed the help of flat blade screwdriver to really cram that O-ring down in there. But at the end of the day, we were able to get the snap ring back in there, and we go ahead and do a second test with it.
Yeah. It's a hole. There you go.
All right, gentlemen. Where's that gas cap? You want to get my gas cap nowadays? Back of the box. We're going to have to take it off when we put it back on. Now. Next up, we went ahead and cut off the old damaged connector and soldered on the new pigtail. And typically, I like to use solder with these connections. Sometimes you see other people use crimp splices and so forth, but I like to solder the connections, get a good, nice, solid mechanical and electrical connection there. I'll also put shrink wrap over the top, the dual wall shrink wrap. that has a weather sealant inside it. So basically what happens when you heat up the shrink wrap, it has almost like a hot glue kind of substance inside it, and it creates a nice moisture tight seal. Never had an issue with any of these connections in the past, and figured that was a good thing to do underneath here with the gas tank, and hopefully don't have to remove the bed again to get at it, and hopefully this will last for a long time for us here.
Good? Oh boy.
Didn't hear it prime. It's not good. Did it prime there? I couldn't hear it. I can't hear it. Must have been the second time I did it. All right. All right, everybody, now that we got her running good again, we're going to go take her for our first of the year car wash. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button down below. Hit the like button if you like this, and keep tuned to the channel for more content on my Sonoma. We're also going to introduce the Subaru STI this summer, as well as my E21. So, again, subscribe, hit the like button, and hope you enjoy the content. Thanks for watching. Man, the way this thing hooks up with the posi traction back there, I wish I would have put that in there 5 or 10 years ago when I first did the LS6 swap, just because it hooks up so good. Even on these old tires on here, these tires are probably almost 20 years old. I think they're the original Z06 tires that came with the wheels. But now having both wheels in the back doing the traction work is great.